Resident Evil Requiem is a survival horror game developed and published by Capcom and released on February 27th of 2026 for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch 2, and PC. As the ninth main numbered entry in a franchise that now stretches across decades, spin-offs, remakes, handheld versions, and experimental side projects, Requiem carries weight in more ways than one. With the return of Leon Kennedy and the debut of FBI analyst Grace Ashcroft, plus a long-awaited trip back to Raccoon City, expectations were high. There were concerns about whether juggling multiple perspectives and legacy characters would make the experience feel messy or overstuffed. Instead, the game launched to massive commercial success, moving 5 million copies in just 5 days. And more importantly, it delivers where it counts. Requiem feels focused, confident, and like it understands what Resident Evil means to its fans. Before diving deeper, it is worth sharing where I stand with this series. I first experienced Resident Evil as a kid, watching my uncle play the original. I was too scared to hold the controller, but I was hooked on the atmosphere. When Resident Evil 2 came around, I could not resist anymore. The art style, the music, the police station, the tension of opening a door not knowing what was behind it, it all pulled me in. I eventually went back and played the first game myself and never looked back. Over the years, I have played everything. The main entries, the remakes, the side games like Gaiden and Survivor, the Outbreak titles, Operation Raccoon City, Umbrella and Darkside Chronicles, and even the handheld versions like Mercenaries 3D. I say all that to make it clear that I am not coming into Requiem casually. I care a lot about this franchise. You begin Requiem as Grace Ashcroft, an FBI analyst investigating mysterious late-onset T-virus deaths connected to the Wrenwood Hotel, the same place where her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, was killed. What starts as research quickly spirals into something much worse. After a series of disturbing events at the hotel, Grace is captured by yet another Umbrella-affiliated scientist. Eventually, she crosses paths with Leon Kennedy, who is chasing similar threads. Their search for answers pulls them back to the ruins of Raccoon City, forcing both of them to confront buried history and long-standing secrets.
What on earth? Who's there? Is someone there?
Narratively, this is one of the strongest Resident Evil stories to date. At first, it seems like a familiar setup, but the deeper you go, the more it starts tying together threads that past games either ignored or abandoned. Resident Evil has a habit of introducing major characters or plot points and then never fully paying them off. Requiem makes an honest attempt to weave past events into something that feels cohesive. It doesn't fix every inconsistency in the timeline, and yes, there are still moments that raise questions about who is alive, who is missing, and which corporations are secretly working together. But for once, it feels like the series is actually acknowledging its own history instead of sidestepping it. The final act leans into theatrical territory in a way that feels earned rather than random. There is classic Resident Evil flair, but there is also a stronger sense of direction than the series has had in years. Gameplay is split between Grace and Leon, and this is where Requiem really sets itself apart. You can switch between first person and third person at any time, but the design clearly favors first person for Grace and third person for Leon. As Grace, you are vulnerable. She shakes when she aims, she panics at sudden noises, and she runs out of breath quickly. Her sections feel much closer in tone to Resident Evil 7 by being slow, tense, and oppressive. Exploring in first person makes every narrow hallway and dimly lit room feel personal. Even with the option to switch perspectives, it is obvious the game was built with this immersion in mind.
What the fuck?
Leon's sections are more action-focused. He moves with confidence and experience. His inventory is larger. His arsenal includes shotguns, rifles, grenades, and a brutal hatchet that can parry incoming attacks, even chainsaws. Where Grace feels fragile, Leon feels capable. His segments have more enemies on screen and demand quicker thinking. You are often surrounded, forced to manage space and resources on the fly. Even so, the pacing balances things out. After a heavy action sequence with Leon, shifting back to Grace's slower, more methodical gameplay keeps the experience from feeling one note. Grace's main hub is the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, a claustrophobic facility divided into different wings filled with infected patients and staff. The virus this time allows enemies to retain fragments of who they once were. You might hear a chef still talking about recipes or a singer humming to herself. It adds a layer of unease that goes beyond simple growling zombies. Grace also carries a blood collector, which lets you gather blood from certain spots and craft hemolytic injectors. If you sneak up on an enemy and use one, you can cause them to explode and permanently remove them from the map. Otherwise, there is a chance that fallen enemies return as stronger blister heads, reminiscent of Crimson Heads from the Resident Evil remake. That risk forces you to think carefully about which enemies you eliminate permanently and which ones you risk leaving behind. Grace uses a traditional item box, and on classic difficulty, ink ribbons for manual saves. Hidden coins unlock upgrades like hip pouches and health enhancements. Crafting plays a big role, with blood used for special injectors and scrap materials used for ammo. Interestingly, only green herbs return this time, but it doesn't feel like a loss because progression is more focused on injectors and crafted enhancements. The gameplay does a good job at keeping you engaged with its mechanics. Every decision matters and every hallway feels dangerous. Leon's sections unfold in the outskirts and interior ruins of Raccoon City. His enemies are more aggressive and varied, including infected that throw spears or carry gas canisters. Instead of an item box, Leon gets points from killing zombies and uses store stations to buy, sell, and upgrade gear, motivating you to go out and find as many enemies as you can. The structure still encourages backtracking and exploration, but it feels less restrictive and more combat-driven. It is not as scary as Grace's campaign, but it remains tense thanks to enemy density and resource management. If there is one area where Requiem stumbles, it is puzzles. While there are plenty of them, most boil down to finding an item and placing it somewhere obvious. Some require examining an object to find a hidden latch, but rarely do they challenge you in a meaningful way. Notes with full codes conveniently written out feel unnatural in a world that otherwise strives for immersion. Resident Evil has always had slightly exaggerated puzzles, but here they lean too far into simplicity. It's functional, but it could have been much more inventive. I also found myself wishing the structure of the levels was a bit stronger. The areas themselves are fun to explore, both spatially and vertically, and the amount of environmental detail makes them feel impressive at first glance. But the care center especially ends up feeling a lot like an expanded version of Lady Dimitrescu's castle from Resident Evil Village. I kept thinking about how much I enjoyed the structure of older entries like Resident Evil 2, or even Resident Evil 0, where you are naturally exploring one massive location and everything feels connected. Requiem separates its spaces more than I would like. The environments are good, but they could have been longer or more cohesive. I also felt one particular character could have had a better payoff. Their design and early setup clearly point toward one direction, but the story ultimately goes somewhere else entirely. It feels a little haphazard, almost like the game was building towards something bigger before suddenly pivoting.
Hey! Stay right there!
Hey, it's okay. We're not infected.
So you're normal?
I think so.
Visually, this is the best Resident Evil has ever looked. Character models, especially Leon and Grace, are incredibly detailed. Facial expressions carry emotional weight in close-up scenes. Environments are dense with texture and debris. Reflections are stunning. The lighting inside the care center creates oppressive shadows, while the open sections of Raccoon City feel haunting in their scale. There were minor technical hiccups, including occasional slowdown during heavy combat, and a brief visual glitch with a weapon strap, but nothing that significantly detracts from the experience. Enemy dismemberment is gruesome and satisfying, and boss encounters remain some of the most visually impressive moments in the game. The audio design matches the visual quality. Angela Sant'Albano delivers a standout performance as Grace, with screams and panicked breaths that sound painfully real. Her stutters and hesitation makes her feel distinct from past protagonists. Leon retains his confident tone, balancing intensity with dry humor. Zombie sounds are guttural and unsettling. One minor issue is the ambient audio in Leon's sections, which sometimes swells as if a major encounter is about to happen, even when nothing is there. Still, the soundtrack overall supports the mood well, enhancing both quiet exploration and high-stakes confrontations.
Let's play!
As a longtime fan, I walked away from Resident Evil Requiem impressed. There are narrative gaps and underwhelming puzzles that can frustrate you if you focus on them. But what it does right, it does very well. The dual perspective structure works. The story feels like it finally builds towards something bigger. The gameplay is tight and satisfying, whether you prefer slow survival horror or action-heavy combat. More than anything, Requiem feels like a turning point. It respects the past while trying to move the franchise forward. If this is the foundation for what comes next, Resident Evil's future looks strong.
One day she just disappeared.
I give Resident Evil Requiem an 8.5 out of 10.
Sorry. When it happened, I was happy it wasn't me.
Is that bad?